Sox in the basement.
The winter meetings are going on. The White Sox have some items on the wish list. It's not flashy, but we are learning things as we're paying attention. Welcome in the Sox in the basement. Ed, have you paid any attention to the early buzz? Because to me, there's a few different things going on this week for the White Sox. You have their hope that they're going to be the number one overall pick in the MLB Draft. You have a very, very high pick, I think second overall in the Rule 5 draft. Remember, they benefited from the Rule 5 draft last year. They seem to be doing a good job at identifying guys they can bring in who can contribute that they essentially poach from another team. Those things are probably focuses people don't want to talk about because we'd like to see signings. We'd like to see trades. But there's some targets that are kind of floating out there right now. The idea that Scott Merkin writing this past weekend, not just one corner outfield position. Overall, they want to improve the corner outfield. So it asks the question, is Andrew Benintendi a DH if everything goes exactly the way that Getz wants to do it? The idea that they're looking more at first base and they're not saying corner infield. Does that mean they're saying, okay, Miguel Vargas is a third baseman, not a first baseman, or we think we can get a first baseman in our wheelhouse, what we want to add a lot easier than a third baseman, so that's just how it's going to go. They're looking for a left-handed bat. They're looking for some veterans that aren't going to be blocking prospects, but more of those that are leading a path there. They want to get some high-leverage relievers. There might be another starter that they're looking to go get. They're not shopping Luis Robert Jr., but they probably would move him if the right deal came along. There's a lot of things going on here. What piques your interest the most?
I mean, for me, it's got to be Luis Robert Jr. because if you move him and you don't get major league ready talent, now apparently you're looking for 3 outfielders. And so it starts and kind of ends, I think, with him and what the return you get for him is, because if you go at this point in his career, with the way the last 2 years have gone, if you end up going with high ceiling, low floor lottery tickets that are down in A ball, right? Or maybe double A that have a lot of potential, but maybe bust worthy very, very soon. That type of a gamble for Robert, it doesn't help the current major league roster and actually kind of takes a step backwards in the rebuild. If you're able to trade him and acquire something that can help you in the mold of a Miguel Vargas, okay, a prospect that the shine's gone off of, that there are question marks surrounding, somebody young, controllable that you think you can fix kind of a situation. If that's what the return is, and maybe some of those holes are filled, then we don't have to spend time looking at the free agent market. But if you're just worried about what Anthony K's that are going to try and sign, because that's the level, right? It's going to be guys that are not uninteresting, but not somebody that you're going to sit there and go, I'm going to go out and buy that jersey. You know, we're not going to get those guys.
I don't think there's a jersey purchase headed here.
No.
I don't think that's occurring. I think there's a possibility they still go out and get a pitcher that's better or more known than an Anthony K. They may add another starting pitcher. They may find a high leverage reliever that you're like, oh, I know who that guy is. I had to look up who Anthony K was. So I don't know if they're all going to be at the Anthony K level.
No, but even the known names are going to be more along the lines of Mike Tauchman. How about that?
Okay.
Where this is a guy that you've heard the name, you probably know a little bit about him. You might even have a sense of what kind of a player he is, but it's not going to be somebody that you sit there and go, finally, we've solved this long-standing issue of who's going to play right field or whatever it is, who's going to be the first baseman. It's not likely to be that type of a solution. It's more likely to be a guy that you sit there and you go, like you just said, oh, okay. You know, it's just, yeah, okay, I can see what they're doing here on a 1 or 2 year deal, right? Somebody like Ryan O'Hearn, when we had that conversation, he's kind of that level, I think, of, okay, you know, you're not excited about him. He's probably good for the team, probably going to be somebody that helps out the young guys and brings some stability to the lineup, but not jersey purchase worthy.
No.
And a guy that you would look to replace as soon as something better came along, either through the minors, through a trade situation, or, you know, even through the draft or somewhere in there. Okay.
If you listen to the early comments from Chris Getz, from the winter meetings. And we've been listening to all of his comments from the GM meetings. We've listened to the things that he said in between then. We've seen quotes that Scott Merker from MLB.com has from him. You have to kind of piece it all together. He is still trying to push, and I'm not saying he's wrong pushing it. I mean, he kind of has to push it. Look, this team is young. There's a core, and we think they're going to get better in 2026. One of the things being said is, look at what they did in 26. Look at the excitement that you saw. Understand that they made mistakes because they were young. They will all be better next year. Now, I mean, that's a dangerous thing because injuries happen and some guys don't continue to develop and development's not linear. But what he's trying to say is, look, we think the same team walking back in next year already is better than the team in 2025 because they're all so young and they're all going to get another crack at a Major League Baseball season. Many of them didn't even get to start the season up here. Now they kind of know what it is. We see them. We're working with them. They're not finished products yet, so they're going to get better. So now the idea is, what can I do to help them along? And when does the next prospect get here? When you read between the lines, they're expecting Braden Montgomery in their outfield before the season's out, right? That's the guy who is the really high ceiling outfielder that came over in the Crochet deal. And if he pans out, you got Teal, Mydroth, and him for that deal. And you're going to have a real hard time arguing with me that that wasn't a good trade for the long term and the health of the team, and for a GM that had to find some way to start to rebuild the mess that he inherited. He may have been in the building, but it wasn't his mess. And you're going to see them really, I think they're very hopeful. Noah Schultz takes a step, gets to the majors before the year is out. Hagen Smith takes a step, gets to the majors before the year is out. Those guys were iffy. There was some good stuff, there was some bad stuff, but long term, these are guys they want to see not only in their rotation, but up towards the top of it. So that's one of the things that's going on right now. That's one of the focuses of the general manager. And I don't think it's completely wrong to look at it that way. I'm encouraged at least that he's saying, but I still need to add some outfield bats. But I still need to get some high leverage relievers. But I still need to support these young players. We're not a World Series contender in 2026, but I want to win a lot more games. And that's the approach that they seem to be taking. And I don't think that they could go the whole winter meetings and not make a move. I just don't think you're going to see anything flashy.
Well, and I almost wonder if he's going to not make a move in the winter meetings. There's a possibility that what he's going to end up doing is picking the best higher leverage relievers that are left over after other teams that are going to compete sign these guys. That he's going to be picking from that second or third tier of outfielders that might provide an upgrade over what they have. Better than Brooks Baldwin. That's probably your level, but maybe not somebody that is really in demand. I don't see him being able to get into a bidding war. The one move or two moves that I think could be made, one move specifically Robert Jr., but the second move that I'm talking about there is just any trade in general. That's the one thing I could see him doing, is making a trade to try and fill some of these holes. The question becomes, again, what position of strength are you dealing from? And if it's catcher, how much are you getting back?
He's not moving Teal or Carroll. I can't see him doing
Corey Lee. How much are you getting back for Corey Lee? Because that's where I was going with that is.
Well, you make me nervous. Every time somebody says, what if they move a catcher? Don't, whoa, knock it off. He's got to be. Yeah. I mean, you first of all have to be sure which guy is the guy that you really believe in long term. And then you have to be sure that guy is going to continue to get better, because the worst thing that could happen is to move one of them. And the one that you keep doesn't develop as well as the one that you let go of. And the return turns out to not be that big of a deal when we look back on it 3 years later or something like that. Like, you don't, that's why that makes me very nervous. I don't think he's going to do that. Honestly, I think that if he's going to make a trade that doesn't involve Robert Jr., it is from the plethora of fourth and fifth starters that are controllable, the teams that are looking to add an arm that has several years of control and can come up and be a swing starter for their team or be a fifth starter for their team. And I think that's where a Sean Burke or a Jonathan Cannon, who are now currently listed in the rotation, I don't know if we talked about this. I don't know if they make the roster, but that type of player paired with Lenyn Sosa, let's say, I mean, let's do the math on the field real quick here, right? Your shortstop's Colson Montgomery. Your second baseman is Chase Mydroth. You have Miguel Vargas out there. You've got these two catchers. You've got a general manager talking about the idea of looking for a first baseman or a corner infielder, and you want to improve one or two corner outfield spots with Andrew Benintendi still out there. The DH role is filled. And if they're not looking for Sosa in the corner infield, I think that's a guy that he is mentioning. I think when he goes to lunch, goes to dinner, walks into a room, bumps into a GM on an elevator, what do you think about Lenny Sosa? I think he's going to utter that 20 times this week when he's at the winter meetings. I think he's part of a package to try to make improvements in other areas that Chris Getz would move. Because I don't see where he fits. Even with his over 20 home runs, even with the things that he provided offensively, with the subpar defense and not a real position that you can find, he's hoping to find a team that says, we don't really care. We just want a guy that we can move around the diamond, give guys days off, and produces at the plate. Because we're that level of a team that lower defense isn't going to hurt us as much because we're in a different spot competitively than the White Sox are.
Yeah, well, and that's just it. There's definitely some things that he can trade and some guys that he's got that are assets for him. But again, the question becomes with the winter meetings when guys are looking, when GMs are looking at trying to make the big splashy move, the Wilyer Abreu's and Jarren Durans of the world, trying to sign some of these Japanese free agents, trying to sign some of the major free agents. Lenyn Sosa becomes a smaller deal and probably is something that's a fill-in down the road of like, hey, we think this guy is really exciting and we can do something with him. Unless Chris Getz is having conversations with other teams that are building up to something where they're just matching up. I've got Lenyn Sosa. What do you have in terms of bullpen arms? Or I've got a Lenyn Sosa. What do you have in terms of first baseman?
I mean, it's very possible.
Trying to see if you can make a swap there of I've got too many guys that I think can produce at first base. But I like Lenyn Sosa as a second baseman because I got nothing. I got nothing at second.
For those of you hoping to keep mom and dad, grandma and grandpa out of assisted living, switch to a new age of life with Hyatt Home Medical Equipment. Make it so they can get around on their own and live independently with stair lifts, ramps, grab bars, lift chairs, even bathroom remodeling. Hyatt's going to work with your insurance. They have 0% financing for qualified individuals. They have the latest and greatest in CPAP machines and continuous glucose monitors. There's so many things that they provide at a great price, and they're going to make sure you get the right piece of equipment, the right assistance, and they're going to work with you. See everything that they can do for you right now at hhme.com. I think about what you just said there. That, look at all these Japanese free agents and look at all these big name guys and Scott Boras is walking around and the big boys may be playing right now in the sandbox at the winter meetings. But I would think that a savvy general manager, maybe not at the beginning, maybe he lays the groundwork on Monday, but towards the end of it, there's a GM out there that's frustrated he didn't get anything done at the meetings, right? I mean, these are still human. These are still human beings. These are still people. You go and you play fantasy football every once in a while. You're like, I just haven't made a trade in forever. I'm just gonna pull the trigger on this. Like we all have like these. It's a little bit of the ego, and I think that Chris Getz laying the groundwork and then bumping into some guy from a team and going, hey, I know that you haven't been able to get that one thing done yet, but I mean, whether you get it done or whether you don't get it done, you still need a Lenyn Sosa and a Sean Burke. Like, well, let's at least get this done. That way, on the way back, you're not a guy who accomplished nothing.
Yeah,
right?
well,
I think a savvy GM if he makes a move, it's towards the end with a guy like that.
Exactly. It's general managers, I think, have to justify their jobs constantly in baseball. And a GM that walks out of the winter meetings and has done absolutely nothing to move the needle on his team is generally viewed as a failure.
Right. So, if I were the owner, I'd be like, what'd you do? You went to Hooters for 3 days? You didn't make any deals? Like, I'd be aggravated with him.
Right. Yeah. And if you go to Hooters, you should at least be picking up something from there. Okay. It doesn't matter what it is, but your general managers right now that are in the Chris Getz sell mode are all hitting the same 5 or 6 teams up. The ones that are are in definitive buy mode. There's a lot of teams that are sort of in between, right? There's a lot of teams that are sitting there that were in the middle of their divisions last year that are torn between, do I add and really go for something, or do I start tearing this thing down a little bit, or can I make some lateral moves that'll just help the team be marginally better? What can I do? There's a lot of guys that are in between. Chris Getz is obviously talking to the big buyers, right? But that's more of the Luis Robert Jr. thing. Okay, he's trying to convince the Dodgers that Robert Jr. would be a great fifth outfielder for them. And, trying to convince the Mets that the $20 million is a drop in the bucket to get a guy that could be a superstar for them, because the Mets are eternally spending a lot of money on guys that are not going to quite produce the results that they need to. So he's looking at that. He's talking to the Yankees. He's talking to the Blue Jays. He's talking to these teams that have won. But there's also general managers out there that are desperate and caught in between. The Orioles are desperate and caught in between. Okay.
Oh God, they're a mess.
The Rays are always looking to try and do something because the Rays can't spend any money. Lenine Sosa and Sean Burke are like offering the Rays, I don't know what, a bag of donuts when they haven't eaten in 4 days. Okay.
The analogies are great today. You're doing a bang up job.
Thank you.
You're doing a bang up job.
I appreciate that. But that's who Chris Getz has to, he's got to hit up everybody. So, it's going to take him a few days, I think, to get some traction and something done. He doesn't have Garrett Crochet this year. He doesn't have the obvious sell where it's like, oh my gosh, teams are champing at the bit for him. A lot of teams are kicking the tires on Luis Robert Jr., but there's guys ahead of him in the pecking order. There's guys, we talked about this on a previous show. There's guys like Byron Buxton who can be had from the Twins. There's a couple of outfielders for the Red Sox could be had. There's Kyle Tucker is sitting out there in free agency. You have options well ahead of Luis Robert Jr. He's not as
he doesn't get moved at the
valuable.
winter meeting. He doesn't get moved at the winter meetings because there's too many things that are in front of him that people want to kick the tires on. He's the consolation prize for somebody that misses out on something that they want more than Luis Robert Jr. If he gets moved, it's in a month or two. I think it's more likely that second trade, not the Robert trade, but here's a package. I keep saying it's Sosa and a pitcher, but who knows? But that's what I think he's pitching, walking around, standing next to some GM in an elevator, having hors d'oeuvres at a mixer or something. I don't know what they do at these things. I should go to one of these. I thought about going to it, and then I thought they're not going to do anything. I was like,
what are they going to say?
They're not going to do anything. It's like one of my things I want to do. I want to go to a winter meetings, as Sox in the basement and walk around. I'm like, what are they going to do? I'm going to go get on my Twitter and tell you nothing happened today. I just can't find myself doing that. One day I'd like to go though and kind of see how the whole thing goes. If you
go to Hooters with the Rockies GM,
right? Exactly. Well, the Rockies GM doesn't have very much to do. If you're the Rockies GM, you're miserable. You were the worst team in baseball last year, much like the White Sox were the year before, and much like the White Sox the year before, you're ineligible for the draft lottery. So there are 18 teams that missed the playoffs. 3 of them are ineligible to be in the draft lottery. Okay, so 15 teams will be thrown into the draft lottery on Tuesday. The White Sox have a 27.73% chance of getting the number 1 overall pick in the 2026 MLB Draft.
The race for Rock Chalowski, whose name sounds so made up. Rock Chalowski does not. He sounds like a Nintendo character from the 80s.
What position does he play? What does he do?
He's a shortstop, shortstops are movable.
I love but shortstops. This is my thing. I'm always like, give me a shortstop, because if he's blocked, he becomes a center fielder. He becomes a second baseman. He becomes a third baseman, right? Like if you draft something that's like a third baseman, he's not moving over to short. So, I'm all for drafting as many shortstops as you can. The team that is closest to the White Sox in percentage chance of getting the number 1 overall pick are the dreaded Minnesota Twins at 22.18%. The Pirates at 16.81 are the third best chance. The Orioles are at 9.24%. The A's at 6.55, and everybody else gets really, really slim, really, really quick. Now, the Sox, there is a doomsday scenario here because they're going to pick 6 teams here for the top 6 picks. There's a doomsday scenario here where they're unlucky. But that is one of the big things that they're looking at this week. Chris Getz has his things that he'd like to go and do. I think the most likely thing is that he runs into an agent of a player that nobody's paying attention to, and he convinces that guy to make the move now at the price that he wants to get, because that agent also wants to tell somebody he did something for them. Like that's the only way, or that trade. But in reality, he's really interested in where they're going to pick, and then he's got to make a Rule 5 selection that I'm really interested to see who it is. Those are the focal points, I think, this week.
Well, and the other thing he may be doing, too, in the early going is speaking of the Rule 5 draft, is some of these players that if he's interested in them in the Rule 5 draft, he might be trying to swing small trades for them. And if there's a couple of those guys...
Before the draft?
Before the draft, yeah, just to secure them. Because we talked about there's a number of pitchers that are interesting.
Yeah.
And there's even some position players that are kind of interesting. So if you think about somebody like Everson Pereira, who, is not likely to be... I don't know if he would have been Rule 5 eligible, but there's a guy that's on the outs of the Rays 40-man roster anyway. Okay. That's the type of guys that maybe Getz is looking for, going, these are players I would like to get my hands on if I can, because the difference between trading for them and getting them in Rule 5 is if he trades for them, he doesn't have to keep them on the roster all year. Even if he adds them to the 40-man, if they've got options left, he can still shuttle them down to AAA or AA or wherever he wants to put them. But, in the Rule 5 draft, you got to keep him on the roster. So if that's, those are possibilities too, that he's looking at those types of players and sitting there going, that's, the return for somebody that I don't believe in anymore, that I'm not going to use anymore, that may have value to some other team. Lenyn Sosa is probably a little bit more value than that, but that might be, Corey Lee for one of those guys, and, another minor league prospect or somebody else that can help them out, a reliever that can help them out. That type of a trade, I don't think, is out of the possibility too.
Sox in the Basement listeners trying to make the most of your money, give a call to Tom Walsh, your Edward Jones financial advisor. Located on the corner of 111th and Kedzie, but serving the Chicagoland area, Tom has a get-to-know-you approach and a do-the-right-thing attitude. He's been doing this for decades. It's all about knowing your options when you're investing and planning for your retirement. No matter what stage you are at, it costs nothing to check in with Tom. Give Tom Walsh, your Edward Jones financial advisor, a call today, 773-779-0023. Edward Jones, member SIPC. One of the other things that I noticed when just rifling through everything that was happening at the winter meetings was another article from Scott Merkin from MLB.com, who's been on this show many times. And he was talking about the possible focuses of Chris Getz at the winter meetings. But he had a lot of quotes from players, who their take on the season and their take on the team. Now, when it comes to a player, players are always going to be positive, right? You want them to be positive. The moment I start reading about a player on my team saying, we're not that good, we really need to add some things, a few of these guys got to go, there's issues, right? So I'd much rather read these things. So, but take them for what they're worth. Davis Martin talking about this current White Sox team, and he is definitely a pitcher in your starting rotation. I would say to him and Shane Smith are really the only two that I'm sure. And then, of course, this K, I think he's getting a really good chance because they went and they signed him. Here's Davis Martin. At the end of the year, everybody felt we had a lot of meat on the bone. It was one of those deals where if we had this team all year, I think we could have done some really exciting stuff. He was encouraged by the second half. Now, the second half I was encouraged by as well, but let's not get too excited about the second half. They come out of the All-Star break and go 500 until about September 11th. And then they finish 28-37 for the second half. I don't know. That's not like you still were under 500 in the second half. You were better. You still lost 100 games, right? Like the last couple of weeks, they were disappointing to me. I really thought they were going to finish above 500 for the second half. That's what I wanted to see them do. They had a rough thing at the end. Now, again, young team, they're learning. I'll go to, what do we got? I know we talked with Shane Smith too. Here we go. Shane Smith talking about this team. This year is the kind where you learn from your mistakes from last year, or you learn from the good things you did last year and kind of run with it. I don't think there's any reason for the core 9, 10, 12, whatever it is, why we can't compete every single day and compete for 162. And then Martin goes on to say, I feel like we found our identity this past season. We found our culture. It's exciting. You go a whole offseason and have something to look forward to and are ready to continue to build. So there is an attitude amongst the team, or at least with these two starting pitchers, that they feel very positive about what was built last year. And I want that for my players, Ed. Don't you? You want that, don't you? They're also on the team. I think you still need to add a couple of these veterans. I think you have to help these guys along. If anything, it's quotes like this and this feeling from the roster, from the dugout. This has got to be Chris Getz's motivation to make sure that he puts as much support as he's allowed to with the budget he's given around these players for another year of development and hopefully more wins, more results. Because if you go out next year and you don't improve very much from the year before, all that I just read, they're not saying it. They're not saying it next year. That culture dies. Because if they don't get better, if they don't say, okay, last year we learned something and these guys weren't here the whole time, but this year we're going to be even better, and they go out and they're not better, they're the same or worse, all of this dies. So that's why it's imperative that Chris Getz goes out and makes sure that he finds that corner outfielder, that corner infielder, adds those guys in the bullpen. Will Venable's got to be, he had his first year as manager. He needs to improve as well. Everybody's got to get better, and it's on the GM to make sure that he's putting the right guys around these young guys.
There's nothing to really argue there. I mean, the players will always say that, this is what we want to do. We feel like we're close. We're going to get better. We're going to do this. The platitudes are always going to be there. So
it's different. It's different though, right? I mean, we haven't heard this kind of stuff from the dugout, have we? We haven't. It's been some dark times.
Yeah,
dark times.
A lot of what we've heard really about the White Sox culture is players leave here and are so relieved to be out of the White Sox organization that they feel the need to speak up about it even when nobody asks the question. So it is really nice to hear that these guys believe in themselves. But that again, you're right about the fact that it's probably very genuine this year, even though they didn't finish as strong as fans would have liked, even though they probably didn't finish as strong as they would have liked. It does feel like a genuine thing where they're sitting there going, we can build on this. Okay. They're curious to see what Colson Montgomery does for a full season. They're curious to see what it feels like to walk into the season with Teal and Carroll both behind the plate. Shane Smith year 2, is he going to be better than he was in year 1? Are you going to get Smith and Schultz coming up here and doing something? Have Burke and Cannon figured something out? What are you going to get? There's so many questions and so many possibilities of what could be. I mean, I'm sure they even all are of the opinion that it would be nice to have Luis Robert Jr. just have a good season and stay healthy and be the player that he knows he can be and that they know he can be. And they're probably excited about it.
If he actually sticks around, if Luis Robert Jr. actually sticks around, they don't trade him, and you get a first half of Luis Robert Jr. at his peak, when he's healthy and he's doing what he did a few years back, this team is a lot better. This is an over 500 team. Just add that guy into the middle of the order and watch the development occur and see like some of the young pitchers just take that next step. You could very easily be you're definitely a 500 ball club. You're not at the bottom of the division. You're coming in a series and you're like, we got a chance against anybody.
Right.
You're young, you're hungry, you're better than you were the year before. And who knows, maybe like it sounds pipe dreamy, right? It isn't what I want to hear. I want to hear we're signing a couple of big free agents and we're doing this, we're doing that, and this is what our budget is and everything else. But if you do improve your bullpen, you will add wins to that record from last year. You may not lose 100, you may only lose 90. If Luis Robert Jr. is hitting as well, you're a 500 team with the same group coming back. I mean, I think those are still pipe dreams. You're a long way away from that. But imagine if the bullpen is saving all those closer games and Robert Jr. is adding another run per game or like half a run per game on average because he's hitting 320 and on pace to hit 45 bombs. I don't think he can do that because he's always injured. This is not me saying that could happen. But, I mean, in the realm of possibility, on the giant scale of things that could happen this year, he could stick around, come back, be healthy. And all of a sudden, if he plays where his potential is, teams will be clamoring to get him by May and June. And Getz will be sitting there saying, yeah, but we're winning.
Right, yeah.
And we'll be debating that.
Now.
We'll be debating that. That's what we'll be debating. We'll be like, I don't know. Do you want to move him? I mean, we got a chance here. Man, that'd be great. That'd be amazing.
That would be great.
Can we do that?
That'd be great.
Mark me down for that. Mark me down for that. Just for
I'll take that one.
Put that on my Christmas list. I want
take that one.
I want that.
Call the Tigers. Tell them to trade Tariq Skubal to the National League somewhere. That'll help.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.